So we've been looking at the 6 elements of organizational structure. We talked work specialization, how specific in terms of your job is it to a small number of tasks, or do you do lots of different things? How do we group people? Do we group people based on their customers, based on their geographic region, based on the products? And then we looked at chain of command. That is, who do you report to? How many rungs are there in that in terms of our scalar chain? How many people are reporting to whom? And then we have span of control. How many people report to a single manager? And then we just looked at centralization. That is, where is the decision making? Is it concentrated at the top, or is it among the subordinates? Do we have greater employee empowerment? Before we move on to the last element of organizational structure, we can start to name different types of organizational structures based on 1 through 5 here. So let's take a look at some of those different types of structures. So when we look at the first type, the functional organizational structure, this is breaking up the company based on work specialization. So based on the tasks that people are doing. So if we're going to draw an org chart here, if it's functional, then that would be like an HR department, an accounting department, and a marketing department within the organization. So we are grouping people based on task. And so you can see there is that chain of command, and that chain of command runs through the functional areas. Alternatively, we could have a divisional organizational structure, in which case, instead of saying HR, accounting, and marketing, these would be specific projects or products that our company produced. So you would report to a manager who was making a particular type of good. So if we were GE and we have, of course, our finance, we have our appliance, we have our aeronautics, then we could divide up. And so we have all the people who work in the financial area would be in one division, and then we could have the people who are in aeronautics could be in another. Okay, so we can organize based on those business units, so products, projects, subsidiaries, but still we have is that chain of command, and you can determine from then how much centralization that you're going to have. How much will you delegate down? Often when we look at the functional and divisional structures, they are quite centralized in nature, as opposed to what we are now seeing a circular type of organizational structure. So it still has somebody at the center, and instead of showing a chart that looks like this, we would have a chart that looks like this. And the idea here is to show that there is more decentralization, so it's not just one person at the very top. And it's also to show that these individuals here are at the same level and working together. So there's more team-based collaboration at different levels of the organization, as opposed to the more functional or divisional, which can be quite siloed, right? These people may not interact with each other at all. They may only report to the person above them. So functional and divisional are much more of that traditional in terms of you report to your boss and you don't necessarily interact a whole lot with others at the same level within the organization as you do, versus the circular, which emphasizes that interaction. Other types of organizational structures might be more team-based. So here we have a leader and their workers working together. And so it's less of that centralized work because the group is interacting at very much the same level. You might have a flat hierarchy. So here, people are the same. It's not a clear leader. When we look at startups, so new businesses, they are likely to be a flat hierarchy. That is, everyone is on the same level. Everyone is equal. There's large autonomy. Everyone's just working on their own piece of the project. And you're not reporting to someone above you or getting their approval. Another type of organizational structure is a matrix. So in a matrix, what you have is that you have a person reporting to multiple people. This might be used when you have people working on projects, so they report to one person on one project and someone else on another project. The challenge with the matrix organizational structure is it violates the unity of command. There are two people dictating to this person what it is they are supposed to be doing, and what do you do if that conflicts. So a matrix organizational structure is not a preferred structure because of that violation of unity of command. The last type of organizational structure we'll look at here is a network structure. This is where you are going to hire third parties, so other companies. You're gonna hire consultants. So you're organizing independent people who are not full-time employees of the organization to carry out certain functions within your organization. In other words, you're outsourcing some of the work or all of the work. If we look at Uber, for example, the drivers are all independent third parties. And so this would be more of a network type organizational structure at the driver level. And then they may have more of a traditional organizational structure in terms of its administration and some of its functional areas like marketing and accounting and so on. When it comes to that network type model, we have to look at who do we have as part of our team, as part of our organizational structure. Some of the benefits of having that network organizational structure is that we don't have to hire just to hire. We can bring in the content experts when we need them. So we don't have to keep people permanently on the payroll in all the areas we might need someone. We can bring in a consultant when we need that expertise. We also have access to more talent because, again, we don't have to pull just from the pool of people at our organization. We can bring in the content experts when we need them. There's also lower labor costs because we don't have to keep people permanently on the payroll. The challenge, of course, is that if you are outsourcing, if you are bringing independent third parties into your organization, then there is a lack of control. Right? You can't tell another business really how to operate. You have some kind of contract, so you have to make sure it's a clear contract. The expectations are outlined, but it can be difficult to control what other people do when they don't work for you entirely. You also have to make sure you're communicating with them the issues and information you need from them and giving them the information they need to do the work that you're asking them to do. It can also be difficult to deal with quality issues if you are outsourcing part of the production to another company. And so you're a network of multiple companies to build a final product. Ensuring the same level of quality throughout is difficult when they're not your business and you're not involved in how they operate on a daily basis. So as you're looking at building a network organizational structure, you need to make sure you have chosen the right activities that you're asking for those external organizations or individuals to do. Do you have the right people or companies? Is it clear in terms of the contract's expectations? Is everything known in terms of the cost? There's no hidden costs or additional components that are unknown. Is there a way to break up the agreement? So when you're done with the project, or if the project doesn't work out, is there a clear exit strategy? And do you have similar goals and visions? So if we really want to have the same level of quality, do we have the same culture in terms of the priority we put on quality? So do you have the same organizational culture? We'll talk more about organizational culture in future videos. So you can choose for your organization to be more of a network of individual consultants and other businesses. You can have more of a circular style in terms of you still have that chain of command, but you have more group interaction. And so you're emphasizing as well that decentralization. You can have more of the traditional centralized approach. That's the traditional org charts that we see. They're either functional or divisional. Or maybe it's much more flat. It's more team-based, or it's completely flat, in which case there's lots of autonomy for the individuals entirely. So you can decide what type of organizational structure that you want based on those 6 different, we talked about them so far, the 5 characteristics we've talked about so far.